This is the best part of making art. And choosing the right Apple Pencil is crucial to making this feel more like this. Now, after more than a decade as a professional artist, I now help students turn their art hobby into a career, and too many people accidentally buy the wrong gear. So in this video, I'm going to rank which iPads are best and worst for both professionals, beginners, and hobbyists. And the most important decision when choosing an iPad is which Apple Pencil to get, because it makes a big difference between how fun or frustrating it is to actually draw on the iPad. Think of it like a real paintbrush or colored pencil. If you press harder with a colored pencil, it's going to get darker. And if you press harder with a paintbrush, your line gets thicker or thinner. In the Apple Pencil, this is called pressure sensitivity. 2 of the 3 Apple Pencils have this pressure sensitivity, but the USB-C Apple Pencil does not. And no artist should get that USB-C pencil. I don't care if this is your first iPad and you're just toying around, or you're buying an iPad for your kid to draw on. The USB-C pencil is a waste of money for artists. But what about the other 2 pencils? Should you get the Apple Pencil Pro or just the regular Apple Pencil? There's 2 features that make the Apple Pencil Pro different for artists. One is that you can squeeze the Apple Pencil to trigger different shortcuts. For example, in Procreate, you can set it to select different layers. It'll highlight the layer you're hovering over and select that one. Now, you can do this with the regular Apple Pencil, but it requires both the pencil and your hand, and it's slightly more clunky. Another feature is like a real paintbrush. When you use the flat side, you can paint a really big area really fast. But with the same brush, if you use it on its tip, you can get a really skinny line for areas where you only want to make a tiny mark. This happens because you rotate the brush, and the Apple Pencil Pro can do that. You couldn't rotate the star brush like this with a regular Apple Pencil. And Procreate has totally revamped their entire brush library to take advantage of these new rotation features. So why wouldn't you just get the Apple Pencil Pro? And that's the catch. The Apple Pencil Pro is not compatible with just any iPad. They're only compatible with specific ones. If you have an older iPad, you cannot just buy an Apple Pencil Pro. And fair warning, this is true of all pencils. You cannot mix and match. You need to buy the pencil that's compatible with your iPad. Don't assume that you can use the same Apple Pencil that you have and just buy a new iPad. The good news is that that Pro Pencil is compatible with a lot of different iPads at different price points. But which one should you get? If you're going to be drawing for hours on end, the bigger the screen, the easier and more enjoyable it's going to be to draw on. So let's be real, size does matter. Apple makes 4 different types of iPads, and they're different prices and different sizes. There's minis, regular iPads, iPad Airs, and iPad Pros. This chart mocks up the difference in sizes between the models. And what's exciting to note here is that to get the biggest size iPad, you don't have to get the most expensive iPad Pro. There are 13-inch iPad Airs, which means you can still get that size for a significantly cheaper price, which is awesome. All right, now let's talk about layers in Procreate. If you're new to digital art, Procreate is the most popular professional drawing app on the iPad. There are a lot of great apps, but Procreate is definitely the most popular, whether you're a hobbyist or a professional. And I'm probably biased because I love it, but also I love it because it's so enjoyable and beginner friendly. I've got a really popular tutorial here on YouTube and a class if you want to dive deeper into Procreate itself. But for the purpose of this video, we're talking about Procreate because the app limits the size of your canvas so that it runs smoothly as if you're drawing on pencil and paper. And different iPads have different amounts of power, which means that you're going to get more layers in some iPads and less in others. So how many layers do the different models get? Unsurprisingly, older models get less layers. However, even some of the newer models of the regular iPads just don't get that many layers. Now, this is important. In some models, you can get the exact same iPad, but if you get more or less storage, it's going to change how many layers you can get. For example, if you bought the 7th generation M4 iPad Pro, but you got it with 512 gigabytes of storage, you would get 41 layers in Procreate. But if you bought the exact same iPad with 1 terabyte or more of storage, you'd get almost double that with 77 layers in Procreate. Same iPad, same physical size, different amounts of storage. I know it's confusing. Trust me, I have spent more time on this chart than I'd like to admit. I've added a color-coded key down here to help you separate which model is which. But do you really need 77 layers? Those are literally some of the most expensive iPads. The truth is that 41 layers is probably enough for most people, including professional illustrators. And that's exciting because I want to point out those newer iPad Airs and the Mini 7 get 41 layers. Those iPad Airs are great, but there's one feature that you can't get with an iPad Air, and it has made drawing significantly more comfortable for me over the last year, and that is the nano-texture glass. The nano-texture glass reduces glare and reflection of light on the screen, and this has undeniably made drawing outside far more enjoyable. And if you want to film your art for social media, well, I film art classes on my iPad, and I don't have to stress about the lights reflecting and glaring on the iPad because this just takes care of it. And by the way, if you would like to learn more from me about developing your illustration style and building a creative career as an artist or learning how to draw in Procreate, check out the links in the description. Now, the catch with this nano texture is that it's only available if you purchase 1 terabyte or more on the latest iPad Pros. Now, I don't honestly think that every artist needs the nano texture, but personally, I don't think I can go back. Between all the filming I do and the fact that drawing outside is one of my greatest joys in life, this is a feature that personally has made life better for me. And I really, really hope that Apple will start offering this option on the iPad Airs. All right, so let's rank the best and worst iPads. Avoid anything in the F tier. E tier iPads are okay, but if you can afford something newer, I would. Now the D and C tiers are they're incredible iPads. Look, the D tiers get 41 layers in Procreate and the C gets 77. But none of these iPads support the Apple Pencil Pro. All the iPads that we're going to rank now support the Apple Pencil Pro. Let's start with this year's model of the iPad Pro, which are these 4 up here. And we've got 13-inch versus 11-inch, and then we've got 1 terabyte or more and versus 1 terabyte or less. And unsurprisingly, if you get this year's 13-inch with a terabyte or more, it's the best one that you can get. It's got 77 layers, it's got the nano texture, and of course, Apple Pencil Pro support. But if I got last year's version of the same thing, it's the same. You don't get more layers, it's the same thing. So I actually have this version, I have last year's version, and I see no reason for me to upgrade to the newest one. So it's all about whether you can find a cheaper version of last year's or if you just want to buy new. And it's the same thing with the 11 inches. So while I would still choose a 13-inch over an 11-inch, they both get 77 layers, so it kind of does put them into the S tier. Now, things change once we get to the less than a terabyte of storage. So if I got last year's 13-inch iPad Pro, but with less than a terabyte, I'm going to put that actually in the B tier because it only gets 41 layers. And this year's model of the same iPad, well, this one actually gets 54 layers. So that one I'm going to put in the A tier. And that's an excellent iPad. And it's the same thing with the 11 inches. Last year's model gets 41 layers, and this year's model gets 54. Although if I'm honest, the size makes a difference. I think if I was to choose a 13-inch over an 11-inch, I'd still take less layers than more layers and a smaller screen because 41 layers is enough for most artists. Now, what if price point is your most important consideration? What if you don't care about size, but you care about layers and you care about price point? Well, then the iPad mini, this one is a really good one for you. This one has 41 layers and it's the cheapest iPad that you can get on these in this B, A, and S tier. But how about those Airs? You know I've been hyping them up the whole time, right? Well, of course, I'm going to put the 11-inch into the B tier. They get 41 layers, they're fine. But these 13-inch iPads, this is the best deal that you can get. And I'm going to put them into the S tier, not because they get more layers. So these iPad Pros, they get more layers, they get 77, and those Airs only get 41. And you can't get the nano texture on the iPad Air, but 41 layers is enough for most professional illustrators. And as long as you don't need the nano texture, the price point is so different. I highly recommend these iPad Airs. Now, do you ever feel like your imagination is stronger than your drawing skills? I have helped thousands of artists learn fun techniques to transform their imagination into real drawings and break free from copying tutorials to creating in your own unique style. So to learn how, watch this video next.